Hey everybody, good afternoon. Tanya Gustafson here, a nutritionist and fitness coach with Fit Nutrition. Welcome to Fit Nutrition Podcast. My apologies, I put the wrong time there. So if you checked in a little while ago, I am just going to go right out there and say I put the wrong time on the banner when I was putting it out for the podcast yesterday. So my apologies there, completely my fault. So anyway, thanks for tuning in today, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay. Let me know where you're watching from down below. And you might have seen a theme as you listen to last week and this week and check out some of my blogs and things talking about keto. So, diets have been everywhere for a long time. And, this might be dating myself, I'm sure, and a lot of you as well, too. But growing up in an era back in the, 80s and 90s as a young adult where it was the no fat, the low fat or the no fat, right? And then it became no carbs and things had all fat free on them and whatever. What people weren't realizing is that when it's fat free, then fat and sugar are what give you your flavors in a lot of things, especially if it's something in a package. So if you're taking out the fat, what must you increase? Sugar, right? So that just spiked a whole lot of other health issues that started to plague people. And the whole anti-fat thing was just not a good idea. However, that then led to, let's do a whole bunch and go the other way and do keto, which is extreme amounts of fat, moderate amounts of protein, and then like no carbs, very low or no carbs. And so let's just clear up a little bit what keto was really designed for. So y'all who know me know that I used to work in education in special ed and as a behavior interventionist, specialist in autism, behavior disorders, all of that kind of thing. And so now what keto was originally developed for, hey Marion, thanks for joining. What keto was originally created for was kids that had seizures, a seizure disorder. So they were created for children, not for adults. Okay, so that's an important note there because a child's brain and body is still growing and there's different ways that they're metabolizing, for the brain and things like that. So for kids that there was there's a certain demographic of kids that they were finding that if they were having seizures, they weren't processing carbohydrates right. There was some deficiency there. So what they were doing was removing those carbohydrates from their diet, and they were finding that would reduce the seizures. Okay. They would have to be monitored very, very closely because think about it. So most people think of our carbs as, your bread, your pasta, your rice, quinoa, muffins, bread, things like that. But honestly, yeah, those are carbs for sure. But our whole single ingredient natural carbs are our fruits and vegetables. So if you're eliminating all the carbs, where are you getting your vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients from, right? Those essential things that your body cannot make by itself. So that's what an essential nutrient is. If you ever look at something and it has, essential nutrients, essential vitamins and minerals, whatever, that word essential means that we need to take it in some way because our body can't make it on its own. All right, so that's an important thing to note. So where are we getting our essential vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients from if we're not eating our fruits and vegetables, right? So this whole keto thing, it started with the kids with the had seizure disorder, and they pulled it out. And those kids were very closely monitored by a physician to then supplement in those essential micronutrients that they were not getting in their diet because they pulled out all the carbs, right? So you can be sure that they weren't eating the processed carbs anyway because those are even going to have a worse effect. But they weren't also eating a lot of the fruits and vegetables, or any, for some, that we know that we need every day in order to survive. Really, we need all that, right? So coming back to that, so 80s and 90s are like, no fat, it's not good, low fat, no fat, that's the way to go. Make sure, you don't have any of the saturated fats. Make sure you have margarine or Basil, all those kinds of things. Oh my goodness, it took me a long time to get my mother to stop using Basil because back in the 80s, a heart doctor told her dad that that's what he should be having for a healthy heart. And you'll still see that on the Basil container today. It's heart approved or whatever it says. It's a molecule away from being plastic. It's not very healthy for you at all. It's a fake fat. It's a trans fat. The processing is not something that is friendly to our bodies to try and break down and assimilate and use, and there's no nutrients in there. So I'm not saying that you should eat gobs and gobs of butter, just butter, but if that's your fat component for the day, for that meal, absolutely, it's a far better choice than having something that's not real because you have a real component. So as we're heading towards that, with all the low fat, the no fat in the 90s, and then it's come full circle where keto is very popular and it has been for quite some time, because anytime you try something different, yes, people will lose weight. But is it sustainable for life? Right? Remember those 3 things that, if you and I have a chat before, or if you've seen some of my videos on this before, I always advocate for the 3 things. The 3 is the only number we need to know here, right? 3 is the only number. Is it based in science? Keto does have some science around it, not going to lie. So does blood sugar stabilization, right? Ask a diabetic. That's so key for them. The second is, does it make sense and can you do it for life? So if you can't do it for life, why are you doing it? It's just setting you up to fail. And then the third is, would you let a child do it? Okay, so now the children that were on keto were very closely monitored. But the way that keto is marketed here, and that, that's not a healthy thing for them to do on their own. They did it out of necessity to slow down or help to control the seizures so they wouldn't have to have as much medicine. So for a typical child or for a typical person, that's not where we're at with our body and our brain and our biology. That's not what we need. We need blood sugar stabilization. It's the way we were born into eating, right? Think about your babies, right? Think about the small children, that PFC every 3. That's exactly how we were born to do it. So the keto, people have been saying, well, it's great. I've been doing it for years, and there's very few people that can stick to a diet for years, but there's those unicorns out there that they can do that. But the appeal comes because, I can eat fat, I can eat the bacon, I can eat this, I can add lots of butter, I can add lots of avocados, I can just eat as much as I want, but I'm not eating the blueberry. So think about, that's the part that doesn't make sense, and can I do it for life? Does it make sense to never eat your fruits and vegetables again, or limit them and restrict them, but eat massive amounts of fat? Probably not such a great idea. So Fox News just put out now if you follow Mark McDonald too, he just shared this article with me. He shared it on his social actually as well too. So there's a lot of great information, and what it's basically saying is there's some studies that have just come out, long-term studies, that are showing that, I'm just going to read what it says here at the very beginning here. It says, a new study suggests that a keto-like diet could trigger a spike in bad cholesterol, bad in quotes, right? That's your LDL, and which can lead to a buildup of plaque in the arteries and a significantly greater risk of heart attacks and strokes and other cardiovascular events. So what they're finding is that people who are doing this long-term, especially, are at greater risk because it's so regular consumption of a self-reported diet low in carbohydrates and high in fat was associated with the risk of that bad cholesterol or LDL, and at a higher risk of heart disease. So there's a lead author on this paper. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right. Ulia Ayatan. She's a doctor and a PhD, and she's the attending physician and scientist at the Healthy Heart Program Prevention Clinic at St. Paul's Hospital and University right here in BC. It's a Center for Heart-Lung Innovation in Vancouver. So actually that's pretty close to where I am. So it's great that we're getting some Canadian studies out here, or out there in the mainstream media. So Fox News picked it up from Canada. And so what she says is, to our knowledge, our study is one of the first to examine the association between this type of dietary pattern and cardiovascular outcomes. So it's very important that they're doing this, because there's a lot of people that just because they're not feeling that, and think about this, if you've ever known anyone who's had a cardiovascular event, heart attack or a stroke, on my phone here, there we go, sorry. So looking at the cardiovascular events, there's not a lot of warning with that. It's kind of like the liver, we talked about the liver the last time, things that are going through and this affects the liver too. So cardiovascular events don't show a lot of warning, they just kind of, they happen all of a sudden. and you might feel a little discomfort. You might feel a little unwell once in a while. Not anything really that's going to send you to the hospital unless you get those pains and that numbness in that arm and that dizziness. Then we all kind of know that those are the heads up warnings. But a lot of times it can come on very suddenly and we don't have those warning signs. So people can do keto for a long time, or on and off, on and off, on and off, and really not understand the damage that they're doing on the inside of their body. So what they're saying here is that the ratio usually is what people are doing is 75 to 80% of their diet is fat. Now, even if you didn't know a lot about nutrition, think about that. 75 to 80% of the things that I eat should be fat. Does that sound about right to you? If you had 10 items that you were going to consume today, 8 of those things must be fat. You got 2 left. You might have 1 protein, you might have 1 carbohydrate, or you might just have 2 proteins and no carbohydrates. So think about that. Does that really, really make sense? It doesn't, right? I mean, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure that out, but I'm glad that they've done this study to show. And so this is this also the Harvard School of Public Health is showing those numbers. So when they do that, what happens is the body's metabolic system will try and burn carbohydrates for energy rather, and then when with the keto diet, the carb intake is so low that the body looks for another source. And so then it starts burning the glucose instead of the carbs. And what happens is that it creates the ketones in our body, which then our liver has to deal with all of this stuff that's happening, and it puts a lot of strain on the liver. Okay, that's where the diet gets its name from. The ketones is the keto diet. So it's also showing here that these keto-like diets, so things that are similar, for the new study, the researchers looked at data for those who ate a low-carb, high-fat diet containing 25% or less carbohydrates and more than 45% fat. So not quite as extreme, but still much higher in fat. So again, 45% fat, just under half of everything you ate in a day was considered fat. Again, that probably doesn't make sense either, right? We need fat to burn fat, but we don't need half or most of our intake to be fat. So it says it wasn't quite as low as the standard keto diet, but that's why they called it keto-like. But those were also having a lot of difficulties. So just let me find that number here. Hang on a second. So in a study in the UK, 1,525 people were included in this study. 305 ate a low carbohydrate, high fat diet, and 1,220 ate a standard diet. Those that were on the low carb, high fat diet were found to have a markedly higher levels of LDL, or the bad cholesterol, and ApoB protein, a protein that attaches to the LDL and can help measure the risk of heart disease. So they could actually measure this because something was being attached to that. Your body was producing that. It was attaching it to the protein. They could measure that. So a markedly high, they didn't give the actual percentage there, but they said markedly higher. So after an average of 11.8 years of follow-up, so this is a very long study, right? It wasn't just like, oh, we did this for a month or we did this for 6 months. 11.8 years of follow-up on here. And after adjustment for other risk factors of heart disease, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and smoking, people on the low-carb, high-fat diet had more than 2 times higher risk of having several major cardiovascular events, such as blockages in the arteries that needed to be opened with stenting procedures, so you had to have a surgery, heart attack, stroke, and peripheral arterial disease. So the peripheral arteries that are around, they had disease as well. So that was a release by the American College of Cardiology. So wrapping this up in a nice little bow, right? So, and they also said, oh, here, one last stat, that 9.8% of the participants who were on the low-carb, high-fat diet experienced a new cardiac event within the course of the study, compared to the 4.3% that was on the standard diet. So yeah, more than twice the amount of people had a new cardiac event. So one that they hadn't even had before, they had another one. So let's just wrap that up and put a bow on it here, people, right? And it all comes back to those three questions. Is it based in science? Well, the science is now speaking very loud and very clear after an 11-year follow-up study showing the long-term effects of keto. So, you know, if you have done keto, if you're on keto, if you're thinking about doing keto, I would think again and check that out. You can go onto Fox News Health, and they've got the article on there with the stats and things like that. So you can go and reference that yourself if you want to take a look. I can put the link in the comments here when I'm done, and then you can go and read that all yourself if you would like to, because I'm always about having the sources, right? We want to know that. So yeah, it's quite a lengthy study, and so we want to, you know, steer people away from that. So if you know someone that's doing keto or something like that, or considering doing that, you might want to share this with them just so that they can get some accurate data from doctors and scientists who are studying different things that and how they affect our health and how the outcomes, how the outcome will be for us over the long term. And that's really what we want to know, right? It's not what we do in this very moment that's going to determine our health. One great meal or one bad meal or one skipping a meal is not going to make or break your health. It's not. One day isn't either. 1 week probably isn't. It's what we do repeatedly over time that's going to determine our health and the outcomes and how we enjoy our life rather than suffer with it. You know, and so we want to make sure that we have as much information as possible and then share that with other people that we love and care about so that they can also get really good, solid information. So is it based in science? You know, blood sugar stabilization absolutely is. We know the science of keto now, right? We know that. So I would rather listen to the science and go with the one that makes sense. So blood sugar stabilization. Does it make sense? Well, there we go. We know it makes sense now. Can you do it for life? Well, I don't think that removing fruits and vegetables from the rest of my life or only eating certain ones and never having other ones again for the rest of my life makes sense. I don't know about you. Think about that. And then the third is, would I let my child do it? So would I tell my child that they, you know, can eat the bacon but not the blueberry? That you can never have that banana again? Oh no, you know, you can't have your carrots and cucumber snacks. I don't know, like that just doesn't make sense, right? We're going to be depriving ourselves of vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. And you might say, well, it's not so important. We wouldn't do that. Let the kids have that, and we're not growing anymore. You are still growing. If you are alive and breathing, you are growing. Your cells are reproducing every single day, and about every 7 years, parts of your body are all different, organs, skin, whatever, they all have their same different time limits. But about every 7 years, we're a whole new person. Are you going to be a whole new healthier person, or are you going to decline rapidly? You know, do we want to age well? It's not just about how we look, how young we look, or all of that. We look young on the outside if we are young on the inside, right? Whatever's going on in here is going to show up on the outside. So just remember that. All right, so talking about the keto today and what the studies show. And the studies are speaking very loud and clear. So check out that study. I will put the link in the comments or in the text at the top with the video notes here, and you can check that out. I am happy to bring this to you today, and we can just debunk that keto is going to be one of those things that are healthy for us. We know they're not. We know that PFC3 works. We know that you need a protein, a fat, and a carb together. You know that that's how we were born into eating. We know that balancing our blood sugar and stabilizing our hormones is key to putting our body in homeostasis so that everything can work together synergistically in the way we were born into and designed to function. So thanks for watching today on Fit Nutrition Podcast. Join me again next week on Wednesday. I promise I will put the correct time on the banner next week. I won't get mixed up. And so if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I will come back later and I will answer them for sure. So thanks again for watching, you guys. Have a great rest of your week.